Okay, so here is my third part to my three-part series to end this course with all this additional information that I think is important for a graphic designer or any digital artist to know or at least be aware of. A lot of this stuff gets a bit technical and can be a little tricky to understand, but I'm going to leave this as a downloadable PDF so you can refer to it whenever it comes up in your future career. But now, if you go and work for an agency and they'll have people there that can code and do all this stuff, and you probably won't need to worry about it like I did at the chamber. We had a coder who handled all of this back-end stuff, and I only had to focus on the creative. But going forward, if you find yourself in a one-man shop, this presentation is going to help you better be prepared to handle everything you need to know. This course is mainly focused on design and with the use of Adobe XD, and that in itself is very powerful, but it won't do everything a client will need. So I've talked a little bit about some of the other things, Squarespace, Google Sites. Google Sites, I did a video just to show you how easy it is to use if you need a simple website that just needs to get information out there and it needs to be fast. Doesn't have to be trackable or have a search engine optimization or any of that stuff included in it. That can be a great way to just get something up and on the web and easy to share. But if you're wanting something that has powerful SEO, you really only have two choices, and that's Squarespace and WordPress. I think we all have figured out from my first video that Squarespace is my choice. It's easiest to use. I feel like it's very intuitive, and then all of the SEO options and features are right there for you to include on every single page you add. I recommend them because when I worked with creating websites that rank well, that is the one that was the best for me. But you can also do WordPress hosted with Bluehost. Squarespace is the ultimate hassle-free option with very little to learn, and you can be up and running in no time. They already have created an extensive and impressive assortment of ready-to-made secure websites which look the part and load super fast and are mega reliable. I highly recommend them. From a search engine optimization ease, it's going to be something that is just very intuitive, free to pick up. So why should we choose a WordPress site instead of a Squarespace site? And that could be that you want something that is a little bit cheaper. Squarespace ends up being about $12 a month, whereas WordPress is as little as $5 a month. So what are the downsides of WordPress? Apart from the cost, if you start to get into website design and want to make certain changes, or you want to start adding a bit more content to your website, you might find Squarespace a little restrictive. There's only so much you can do with their ready-made templates, or I like to call them structures. I think that they're perfect enough to, as long as you're integrating your own creative within their structures, it's pretty easy to use. But if you have something that is super customizable to a certain client, WordPress really comes with its own infinite flexibility to add and customize things as you want them to be. So WordPress and Bluehost work together. Why do you need both? Well, Bluehost are the people that will supply the online server where your website will live. That makes them their suggested name, the host. They are fast and reliable, and there is superb customer service should you have any problems. But don't skip on the hosting cost. Cheap hosts have servers which are slow and unreliable, two major important factors that will affect your SEO. If your site is down, then all the SEO that you've already incorporated into your site won't mean a thing because it won't be up to be registered in the next web crawl. So don't skimp on the host. For less than $5 a month, Bluehost will do the complete setup for you. They'll install WordPress, sort out your SSL, the thing which makes your site secure, and even organize a domain name if you don't have one yet. In many ways, up to this point, it will feel as easy as Squarespace. However, what you will have is a bulk standard WordPress site that will look pretty awful, whereas Squarespace has a menu of templates or structures for you to just click on and start jumping into the design. In WordPress, you will need to find a theme, in their words, or a template Many are free, but some have costs associated. You will need to install the theme and then spend some time with their tutorials learning how to make the pages function and work around. It's not that bad, but Squarespace makes this process seem a lot easier. One other downside of WordPress too, I just want to make sure that I point this out, is that you'll constantly need to update it to make sure that your website remains secure. This is a click of a button activity, but the updates occasionally cause conflicts with plugins, and then you'll have to completely reinstall all your plugins that you've applied. So WordPress is this kind of blank slate, and you can add all of these themes and plugins to customize your site, which does make it pretty easy, but it isn't 100% seamless. You can also choose a Squarespace site and just play around with it for 14 days before you buy anything, so you don't have to purchase anything like you do with Squarespace. And WordPress. And WordPress, the Bluehost has a 30-day money-back guarantee, but you do have to pay for it on the front end. Squarespace is fairly expensive. I think I have my site is on Squarespace, and I think it's $156 a year to have that hosted and that template, which I find to be a pretty good bargain. So when you're costing out the design of a website for a potential client, make sure that you are not just budgeting the cost for your design, but you are also incorporating the domain name, any hosting or themes or any other plugins that you may need to purchase with this product. So make sure that that's in the forefront of your mind if this is something that you really want to take on yourself. If you simply want a smart, straightforward website with a minimal of hassle, just Google free WordPress responsive themes for a graphic design studio or WordPress responsive themes for a graphic designer to see the paid options. Note, the word responsive is to ensure that your search out there, your themes will work on any device, a smartphone, a tablet, or computer. Squarespace does this automatically, and you can see the preview with the phone view as well as the desktop view while you're designing it. So that makes it pretty easy to go back and forth with, because sometimes when things go from one structure to another, so desktop to phone, things can look a little glitchy in both WordPress and Squarespace. Sometimes you have to modify your design slightly in order to get everything to lay out exactly where you want it to be. It may take a bit of time rooting through all the choices and getting to the selection that is best for you. To install a theme on Bluehost, they have produced an excellent step-by-step guide, which I'm going to include in the PDF version of this presentation for you to be able to find. Now, if you have a particular design in mind and there's no ready-made theme that appeals to you, then you have a couple other options. One is Divi and the other one is Theme X. So the Theme X is probably an Ethos Stack 1. Okay, so I just said Ethos 1 Stack. What does that mean? Yes, WordPress has a bit of a learning curve, whereas Squarespace is a little bit more intuitive. But I'd call it a short and steep learning curve for WordPress. Might look daunting at first, but you can play around with it just to get your confidence up in it. So don't go to either one of these choices and expect to just pick it up in a day. It's probably going to take a long time to pick up everything that you need to, so modify your expectations. Now, a stack is just a word that refers to a ready-made set of options available from one theme. Now, with your theme chosen, you'll need a couple of plugins to make sure that the functionality of it is working properly, because sometimes they don't. Especially with SEO, you're going to need additional things within WordPress, whereas Squarespace is this sort of self-contained thing. It's got everything there. It may not be as fancy as what you can do with WordPress, but for what it provides, you don't have to do all these plugins and things. But two plugins you will definitely need for SEO on a WordPress site is called Yoast SEO, and that's YOAST SEO. and the other one is Contact Form 7. So you just go to the plugins in the left-hand menu on WordPress admin panel and you search for those plugins and you install them. There are a whole bunch of other plugins you'll see too while you're searching for that, but those are the ones that really allow the best integration with Google Analytics, and we'll go over a little bit of Google Analytics in a little bit. I'm just making sure that you are aware of the Achilles heel of WordPress. The good news for both Squarespace and WordPress is that there are tons of step-by-step tutorials and YouTube videos out there to help you guide you. So I'm really just trying to put all of the information in front of you for the future, and then you can digest it in small chunks however you choose going forward. One thing that I heard as a graphic designer several times with my the website designer that I worked with at the chamber is I needed to optimize my images. So I came from a very print-heavy background in my design. And of course, print is kind of going away and things are more digital. So it took me a long time to get used to making sure I saved everything at the actual size at 72 dpi. You will want to optimize your images. It's a really important part. If your images on your site are too large, they will load too slowly, and then you'll miss what you need the web crawl to get out of those. So, and I'll go over a little bit additional information in a few minutes about making sure that you have alternative text with your images as well, so that helps further along your SEO. But this is a really important part to make sure that you always optimize your images. And so how do you do that? So you would go into InDesign or Photoshop and you would set, or XD. XD does a great job of sizing images down into a really good compact size at a PNG or an SVG or a JPEG, and you just export out the images that way. Make sure they're at 100%. So if something is 1920 by 1080, then you need to make sure that when you export it out, it's 1920 by 1080 saved at 72 dpi. I made the mistake of being stuck on 300 dpi because my background is print, and always saving my stuff at 1080 by 1920 at 300 dpi doubles the actual dimensions and doesn't make it the correct size. So that's just something you have to be aware of, especially if you're like me and you really have a print background and want these huge gargantuan images. That's not going to work great on the web, and it's not going to optimize your search engine optimization. So now that you've got a WordPress or Squarespace site going, and if it's WordPress, then you've had a theme installed, Yoast for SEO plugin installed, and Contact Form 7 installed. For Squarespace, you don't have to worry about any of that stuff. It's already integrated. But you want to make sure that you have a home page on your navigation. So you have a home page, which is a summary of whatever the website is about, a contact page, a page about what you offer, and maybe a page about you. But let's dive into SEO. Okay, so your website looks great to your clients and they love it, but how is Google and Bing going to understand it? And that's the basis of SEO, search engine optimization. You're trying to persuade search engines that you have, whatever company it is, website, but to achieve that you need to understand how Google and Bing think. They use a process known as entity salience analysis, and that's a mouthful, but when deciding what a website is about, don't worry about that too much. It's not all that technical. It just sounds worse than it is. With entity salience analysis, search engines look at multiple pages and multiple signals coming from each of your pages and your website as a whole. The more of these signals that there are, and the closer they match to the more confident Google and Bing, become that you are who you say you are for that website. So let's start by considering the key entities. One of those key entities is the rank, and in order to get a great rank, it's basically what people are searching for that website. Type into Google and Bing. So if it was a graphic design studio, most people would be typing in graphic design studio near me, or graphic designer near me, or poster designer near me. It boils down to the same thing. Location is a key word, and so that's how Google and Bing get your location. So location is a huge thing to have and incorporated into every single page on your website. It's going to give more validity in your rank. So where do you want to put this text for location? At the bottom right or bottom center of every page on your website. This is where people expect to find it, and this is where search engines also expect to find it. So there is plenty of tutorials in WordPress and Squarespace on where to add this, but it's just very, very important. So make sure you are thinking about, especially in your designing, that you're going to have the location on every page. The next thing I want to talk about is slugs, and another entity that's very important while you're creating additional pages on your website. So a slug is basically like an additional page. So if I have belzaticreative.com/contact, so that's where you're going to find my contact information. But what a better way to have your slugs be is something more suited to the search engine. So while this may seem a little long and convoluted, you're going to want to have your search engine look for something, or your website have the search engine look for a slug that's a little bit more complicated. You're going to want to put these specific words in and not specific to all websites, just specific to this type of website. If you're doing a graphic design firm, say as an example, you'd want to have your slug be /graphic-design-services-offered, then your location, and then graphic-design-studio. So you want to put as many keywords into your slug without being completely too long, to make sure that the web crawl and that Google and Bing are going to be optimizing or giving more validity to your site, because all of those words are used over and over again. It's kind of a game when you think about it and how you're phrasing your words, but it's an important part of how the Google and Bing crawl will analyze your site and the content on it. Couple things with slugs, they have to be longer than, or each word has to be more than 3 letters. Each slug has to be more than 3 letters. You don't want to use words like in or by, because it's going to make the web crawl stop at a certain location and not go to the other words in your slug. So keep those things in mind when you are using slugs. Metadata or meta description. This is another entity that is super, super important and can be often overlooked. It's the text that search engines are most likely to use, but not guaranteed to use, but when they show a page from your website in their search results. So it can be your one chance to sell yourself to a potential client by what you say in that brief description. It should be a punchy, attractive 200-character summary of what your content on the website is all about, which makes people want to click through. And you want to make sure that you include the same 200-character summary for your whole website on each page of your website. Now let's go back to your images. I know I've discussed already about optimizing the size of your image, but let's explain your images. Okay, you've got great titles, great slugs and text and metadata, but what about your images? They look fantastic, they load fast, but do Google and Bing know what they're all about? Well, that will get better and better as time goes on, but to help them out, we need to add an ALT, short for alternative description, to each photograph. This will also help your search engine optimization. This description needs to be an honest and accurate explanation of the image, but you can also get in a few keywords of your own if you want. Google Analytics is a key part of being able to tell you a little bit more information about how your site is performing. So this free service from Google will tell you how many people visit your site by hour, by day, by week, or by month. It will tell you how they found your site and what they did when they arrived on your site. So it's a very powerful tool. Now Squarespace has analytics on its own in that option, but it's powerful and great to do both, to look at Google Analytics and compare it with the Squarespace. You can even create specific monitors, such as counting the number of people who get as far and get far on your contact page. In the longer term, it will create a history of data that can be used to identify where possible improvements to your site can be made to further your performance. Now, I've got a tutorial that I'm going to link in the PDF to help you get started with Google Analytics, because it's a little bit tricky, but I want to make sure that I reviewed it. Once you have set up Google Analytics, you'll be given a block of code which needs to be added to your website. And how to add this to your website, you can best be searched on Squarespace and WordPress resource sites to figure out how to include that in there. But it's very important to have that step. Now, I know this is getting into the thick of things and the weeds here, but let's talk a little bit about the Google Search Console. Google Search Console tells you what words and phrases your website ranks for in Google and where you rank. You can use this information to help improve over time your keyword searches, or the types of words that you're including in your slugs, your metadata, and your description. It's going to help you rank better. So it's something that you really need to pay attention to. And if you want to become great at this and learn more, there's countless amounts of YouTube videos on this. And I know for a designer this can get a little bit tricky, and perhaps maybe not something that we're really interested in, but it is good to be able to have a great working knowledge of this stuff so that you can help your client better perform. Then they'll come back to you year after year, and you can keep tweaking and working, maintaining a good contact and relationship with you. That's going to only advance you in the long run. It's just really important information to propel you further. Now, when you're setting up this, you need to verify that you own the website. So you'll probably have to work with your client on being able to get into this type of information. But it's just key. It's just like when you're designing anything and you do research first. This is part of the research phase of things, only it happens after the fact. And it's really the information you get back from this is going to help you go back to that website and make it that much better, and constantly making it work and perform better. If it's your own website for yourself or a client for your client, it's going to make everybody happy in the long run. But be patient, because this could take a little bit of time to both get the data and understand what you need to do with it. So I know that was a lot of information, and you won't remember all of this in a video. So I'm going to include a downloadable PDF so that you can take this with you and refer to it later when you need it. But that's basically it. It's a wrap for this lecture. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out.